The night the lighthouse spoke my name, I knew I was never leaving that coast alive. I didn't hear it like a sound carried by the wind. It came from inside my head, clear and slow, as if someone was standing right behind me, breathing down my neck. Evan. I dropped the flashlight. It rolled across the wet stone floor, the beam spinning wildly, lighting up the rusted walls, the spiral stairs, the salt-eaten railings. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might echo louder than the ocean outside. I was completely alone in the lighthouse. At least that's what the Coast Guard record said. The Cape Hollow Lighthouse had been abandoned for over 30 years. No keepers. No maintenance crews. No tourists. Just a warning sign nailed crookedly to the gate that said restricted area. Unsafe structure. I ignored it like every idiot who thinks nothing bad happens to people like them. I was there because of my job. I record audio. Real places, real sounds. Wind through broken buildings. Waves crashing against cliffs. Old structures groaning in the dark. Horror creators pay good money for authentic ambience. And nothing sounded more authentic than an abandoned lighthouse at the edge of Maine, miles from the nearest town. Locals wouldn't talk about it. Not directly. Every time I mentioned Cape Hollow, conversations ended fast. I shifted. Someone always changed the subject. One bartender finally muttered, "That place don't like being remembered." I laughed. I shouldn't have. The boat ride out was rough. The sky stayed gray even though it was barely past noon. When the lighthouse came into view, it didn't look tall or majestic like the postcards. It looked wrong. Squat. Leaning slightly, like it was tired of standing. The paint had peeled down to bare concrete, streaked with dark stains that looked too uneven to be rust. I set up camp inside the base level. Thick walls. No windows. The air smelled like wet stone and old iron. The ocean slammed against the rocks outside, sending vibrations through the floor like a slow heartbeat. That was when the whisper started. At first, I thought it was feedback in my headphones. A low, almost human murmur buried under the sound of waves. I adjusted the levels, changed mics. The whisper stayed. It wasn't constant. It came in pulses, syncing with the lighthouse lens above me, even though the light itself hadn't worked in decades. I climbed the stairs. Each step groaned under my boots. The higher I went, the colder it got. Halfway up, I noticed something carved into the inner wall. Names. Dozens of them. Some sharp and deep, others faint, like they'd been scratched with fingernails. Most of them were crossed out. When I reached the lantern room, the door was already open. That was impossible. I checked it earlier. Rusted shut. I had to force it just to peek inside. Now it swung gently, creaking in rhythm with the wind. The lens was intact. Clean. Too clean. And it was rotating. No power. No guiding. But the massive glass I turned slowly, casting long shadows that moved even when I stood still. The whisper grew louder, layering over itself, overlapping voices all saying different things. Except one. Evan. I backed away, my heel hitting something solid. A chair. Old, wooden, bolted to the floor. Leather straps hung from the arms, stiff and cracked with age. I didn't touch them. I didn't need to. Images flooded my head. Men dragged up the stairs. Storms raging outside. The light refusing to turn off. Keepers who stayed awake for days. Convinced ships would crash if they blinked. Convinced the light needed them. Needed their eyes. I ran. I didn't stop until I was back at the base, throwing gear into my bag with shaking hands. That's when I noticed my audio recorder was still running. I hit playback. First just wind. Waves. Then breathing. Heavy. Close. Then my voice. "I'll stay," it said. Calm. Certain. "I promise." I shut it off and bolted for the door. It was sealed shut from the outside. That's when the lighthouse light turned on. The beam cut through the fog like a blade, sweeping across the ocean in slow, deliberate arcs. Every time it passed over me, my skin crawled, like something was counting my bones. I slammed my shoulder into the door again. Wood cracked. Rusted hinges screamed. It didn't budge. The whisper returned, no longer subtle. "You came back. I never left." We keep the light. The stairs behind me creaked. I turned slowly. The spiral staircase was full. Not bodies. Not exactly. Shadows shaped like people, clinging to the walls, stacked on top of each other, all facing upward toward the lantern room. Their mouths moved in perfect sync, though no faces were clear. I did the only smart thing I'd done all night. I listened. The lighthouse wasn't haunted the way movies lie about. No random ghosts. No curses. It was a machine. A system. It needed keepers, and when it lost them, it made more. The shadows showed me how it worked. Every keeper who died here had tried to leave. The light didn't let them. Fed on attention. On watchfulness. The moment someone believed the light mattered more than their life, it claimed them. The beam slowed, focused, right on me. My recorder vibrated in my pocket. I didn't want to check it. I did anyway. A new file was recording. I never pressed the button. On playback, the ocean was silent. No wind. No whoops. Just my breathing. And another voice underneath it, speaking through my lungs like a second throat. See how far the light reaches, it said. See how many need us. The shadows stepped closer. I understood the trap then. Fear wasn't the hook. Responsibility was. Convince someone they're needed, and they'll chain themselves willingly. I walked back up the stairs. Each step felt heavier, like gravity itself leaned toward the lantern room. The light flared brighter as I approached, warming the air, drying the damp walls. The chair waited where I'd left it. The straps were new now, soft, supple. The whisper softened into something almost kind. Just until morning, I looked into the lens, and I saw the coast. Not empty, busy. Boats cutting through dark water. Storms forming. Lives depending on that beam. Depending on me. That's when I did something the others never did. I turned the recorder on and set it against the lens. I spoke every thought out loud. Every doubt. Every fear. I narrated the lighthouse, stripped it of mystery, turned its sacred silence into exposed noise. Feedback screeched as the microphone overloaded. The lens vibrated. Cracks spidered through the glass. The whisper screamed. The light shattered. Darkness swallowed everything. I woke up on the rocks below at sunrise, my body broken, my recorder smashed beside me. The lighthouse stood dark and still, finally just a building again. They say the Coast Guard demolished Cape Hollow 6 months later. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm editing audio, I find a track I don't remember recording. No whoops, no wind, just a distant voice, carried across the dark, calling my name. And somewhere far out at sea, a light answers back.